History is filled with bizarre events, like the Cadaver Synod of 897. In Rome, a dead pope, Formosus, was put on trial. Exhumed, dressed in papal robes, and seated on a throne, he faced his accuser, Pope Stephen VI. This spectacle of political vengeance occurred because the church was mired in corruption. Popes were political powerhouses, and the papacy, a prize. The Cadaver Synod, a climax of rivalry, plunged the church into darkness. The trial of Formosus was a grotesque display of power gone mad. It remains a symbol of the dangers of unchecked ambition, a story that still echoes through history. And it all began with a dead man on a throne. The late 9th century was chaos. Charlemagne's empire shattered, Italy a battleground. Noble families saw the papacy as a tool for power, not a sacred office. To control the Pope was to control Italy and the Holy Roman Empire. Rome became a nest of intrigue, with families like the Spoletos and Tusculums fighting for dominance. Popes came and went, some lasting only weeks before being deposed or killed. The papacy's spiritual mission was lost in a sea of corruption. The Saeculum Obscurum, the dark age of the papacy, had begun. Popes plotted, waged wars, and made alliances, breaking the sacred trust of their office. The people watched in fear as their leaders acted like tyrants. Instability reigned. No one knew who truly held power. Into this world stepped two men: Formosus, a respected bishop, and Stephen, a rising force. Their rivalry reflected the larger power struggles tearing Italy apart. Each was backed by rival factions, each with a different vision for the church and empire. Their conflict would not end with words. It would end with a corpse on trial. The Cadaver Synod was born from this chaos. It was the ultimate expression of a world where power mattered more than faith. The papacy had become a pawn in a brutal game, and the consequences would be felt for generations. The stage was set for one of history's most shocking trials. Formosus was a skilled diplomat rising to become Bishop of Porto in 864. His influence grew, so much that the Bulgarian king wanted him as head of their church, but ambition made enemies. In Rome, power was always suspect. Accused of plotting against Pope John VIII, Formosus fled and was excommunicated. He swore never to return, living in exile in France. But fortunes changed quickly. After John's death, Pope Marinus restored Formosus. Back in Rome, Formosus navigated treacherous politics waiting for his chance. In 891, he became pope, inheriting a divided world. Two rivals vied for imperial power: Lambert of Spoleto and Arnulf of Carinthia. Formosus distrusted the Spoletos and secretly invited Arnulf to invade Italy. This decision would seal his fate. The Spoletos saw him as a traitor, and their thirst for revenge grew. Formosus's gamble for political survival created powerful enemies. His papacy was marked by intrigue and shifting alliances. The seeds of his downfall were sown in these choices. The rivalry with the Spoletos would not end with his death. It would follow him to the grave and beyond. The stage was set for a trial like no other. Formosus's alliance with Arnulf led to Arnulf's coronation as emperor in Rome. The Spoletos, furious at being sidelined, vowed revenge. Fate intervened. Arnulf suffered a stroke, and Formosus died soon after. The Spoletos seized the moment, installing their ally Stephen as pope. Stephen, once promoted by Formosus, now turned against him. He claimed Formosus's papacy was illegal, using church law as a weapon. Backed by the Spoletos, Stephen became pope in 896, but condemning Formosus wasn't enough. He wanted a public spectacle. With Lambert and Agiltrude, he devised a plan of cruelty, put Formosus on trial, even in death. The seeds of hatred had grown into a monstrous plot. Death would not protect Formosus from vengeance. The Cadaver Synod was about to begin. The church would witness a trial that defied all reason. The world would see just how far political hatred could go. The legacy of Formosus was about to be dragged from the grave. The papacy's darkest hour was at hand. The dead would stand accused. In January 897, Stephen ordered Formosus's body exhumed. 9 months dead, the former pope was pulled from his tomb in St. Peter's. The stench of decay filled the basilica as workers pried open the sarcophagus. The corpse, half rotted, was dressed in full papal regalia, a grotesque parody of authority. The body was carried to the Lateran, Rome's cathedral, and propped on a throne before the synod. Cardinals, bishops, and nobles gathered. forced to witness this nightmare. The air was thick with fear and disbelief. Imagine being a young priest summoned to see your former pope, now a decaying defendant. Stephen sat opposite, his face twisted with fury. Many in the room owed their careers to Formosus, but none dared protest. The church's highest office had become a stage for horror. The exhumation was a deliberate act of mockery. The symbols of spiritual power were draped on a corpse. The trial was about to begin. The world watched as the unimaginable unfolded. The papacy's shame was on full display. The Cadaver Synod was no longer rumor, it was real. The dead pope would now face judgment. Rome would never be the same. The trial began with Stephen as prosecutor, hurling accusations at the corpse. The dead Formosus, of course, could not answer. A terrified deacon was forced to speak for him, admitting guilt to every charge. The charges: perjury, ambition, and illegally becoming pope. The synod sat in stunned silence, trapped by fear. Many owed their positions to Formosus, but to object meant ruin or death. The trial was pure theater, a show of power, not justice. Stephen's rage filled the hall as he condemned every act of Formosus's papacy. He declared all appointments and ordinations by Formosus invalid, including his own. The logic was twisted, but Stephen was determined to erase Formosus from history. The spectacle dragged on for hours, a grotesque mockery of law and faith. The church's leaders watched powerless as the dead pope was humiliated. The Cadaver Synod was a warning. Power, unchecked, can destroy even the sacred. The trial ended, but the consequences would ripple through Rome. The papacy's authority was shaken to its core. The world would not forget this day. The trial of a corpse had become a symbol of the church's darkest hour. The Cadaver Synod was a stain that would not wash away. The verdict was inevitable. The synod found Formosus guilty on all charges. His papacy was declared null, his acts annulled, his ordinations void. But the humiliation didn't end there. Guards stripped the corpse of its sacred robes. An executioner cut off the 3 fingers Formosus had used for blessings. The mutilation was brutal and symbolic, stripping him of priestly power, even in death. The body was dragged from the church, handed to a mob, and paraded through Rome. Finally, the corpse was thrown into the Tiber River, denied a Christian burial. Stephen and his allies believed they had erased Formosus forever, but their act unleashed a storm of outrage. The desecration shocked the city and the world. The Cadaver Synod had not ended the conflict, it had only begun a new chapter of chaos. The people of Rome would not stay silent. The papacy's shame was now public. The consequences would be swift and violent. The trial of the dead had set Rome ablaze. The Cadaver Synod horrified Rome. Even in a violent age, this was sacrilege. The people saw through Stephen's motives. It was a political attack, not justice. Instead of securing power, Stephen destroyed his own legitimacy. An earthquake soon struck, damaging the very basilica where the trial was held, seen as a sign of divine wrath. Rumors spread Formosus's body, recovered from the Tiber, became the focus of miracles. A cult grew around the dead pope, now seen as a martyr. Public anger boiled over into open revolt. Stephen was overthrown, imprisoned, and soon assassinated. His reign lasted barely a year. The backlash was total. The Cadaver Synod was condemned by all. The trial had unleashed a storm that consumed its creator. Rome was left reeling from the scandal. The church's authority was shaken. The people demanded justice for Formosus. The Cadaver Synod became a symbol of everything wrong with the papacy. Its legacy would haunt the church for generations. The dead pope had the final word. The aftermath was chaos. Successive popes tried to undo the damage. Pope Theodore II annulled the Cadaver Synod, recovered Formosus's body, and gave him a proper burial. But the scandal lingered. Another pope, Sergius III, later reaffirmed the synod's verdict. The church was thrown into legal and spiritual confusion. Were Formosus's priests truly priests? The very foundation of authority was shaken. Eventually, the church condemned the Cadaver Synod as shameful and invalid. Trials against the dead were forbidden forever. The church tried to move on, but the story could not be forgotten. The Cadaver Synod became a symbol of the papacy's darkest hour. It showed how far sacred institutions could fall when corrupted by power and hatred. The image of a dead pope on trial remains a powerful warning. Even the holiest offices are run by fallible humans, capable of great folly. The stain of the Cadaver Synod can never be fully washed away. It endures as a lesson from history. Unchecked ambition can destroy even the sacred.